first mention the topic that we are going to talk about, or she's going to talk about. It is going to be about unleashing the power of AI and cloud, strategies for firms in the era of creative tech. And that is going to be presented by none other than Surya Ramkumar. Ladies and gentlemen, Surya is currently the CEO and co-founder of My Zenith, an AI-powered platform for personal growth. She serves on the board of non-profit organizations and tech startups. She is a #1 best-selling author. Yes, as I mentioned earlier, a keynote speaker. Her profile is definitely diverse and impressive. She has led Microsoft's Modern Work and Security Business Group for MEA, managing strategy and execution across sales, marketing, and operations in 80+ countries. That deserves a big round of applause, I think. And previously spearheaded Microsoft's consulting and support businesses in the Netherlands. As a partner at McKinsey & Company, she advised Fortune 500 companies on strategy and contributed to management literature while also co-founding McKinsey's Future of Mobility practice. She is a passionate advocate for sustainability, co-founding the Future Mobility practice at McKinsey, and is an Amazon #1 best-selling author of The Sky Has Moved Away. Looking forward to reading that book. Among the first climate fiction novels from the region, she possesses broad functional expertise across strategy, sales, marketing, finance, risk management, and operations, and has lived in, guess how many countries? Not 1, not 2, not 5, but 9 countries, leading global teams in multicultural contexts. And you know what? She's basically from Kozhikode. So this is her homecoming. We are so proud that a lady from Kozhikode has adorned so many caps, has done so many things. She was an SSLC topper and a national level badminton player. I don't know, an author, so successful in the corporate sector as well. I'm literally having goosebumps over here. So today, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Surya will guide us through the transformative realm of AI and cloud computing, shedding light on their synergistic potential for businesses in the era of creative tech. So dear delegates of KTX, let us welcome Ms. Surya with a thundering round of applause.
Good morning, everyone, and thanks for that introduction. That was slightly embarrassing, but thank you for that. And let's talk about AI and creative tech. So let me start off with just last week, while I was preparing for this presentation, I uploaded this image into Microsoft Copilot. And I asked the AI to describe this image for me. And here is what it told me. It said, the image you have uploaded is a person in traditional attire interacting with a swan. And it gave me a few more details. Red sari, stone pedestal, intricate columns, pink flowers, and the basin. Now, those of you who may look at it may not sort of notice all these details in just a few seconds. But most of you will also recognize this as one of the most famous paintings by Raja Ravi Varma, Hamsa Damayanti. When I was a child, I've seen this painting many times, and I always thought this was very beautiful. And I used to take art classes as a child, and painting something like this would have been, the ultimate dream. But I also never attempted it, knowing the limits of my own talent in this field. But then, before coming here, I thought, let me try and do something. Let me try and recreate this using AI this time. So I gave AI this prompt. I said, generate an image in the style of Raja Ravi Varma, famous painter from India. So I gave it something it doesn't know. I stated a goal. And then I pretty much gave it the same detail. So I copy-pasted what you saw in the previous slide. And this is what it gave me. This beautiful image. Far better than anything I could have done. And not just that, it did this in the fraction of a time that it would have taken any talented artist to do this. Now, I know this is not an exact replica of what you saw earlier. It's hard to get exact replicas, and especially on the first try. But with a little bit of prompt engineering. So you can ask it to make the lady stand up. You can say, make the basin smaller, get rid of the intricate columns, and all that. And with a few iterative steps and prompt engineering, you will be able to get it much closer to the original. Now, for the purpose of my presentation, this was enough. And that is to make a few points. It is to show you the significant impact that AI has made in creativity and in all other fields, but also especially in creativity, in such a short period of time. So there has never been a more urgent need or more important moment for us to talk about AI and creativity and technology and creativity more broadly. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So since November 2022, when OpenAI introduced ChatGPT into our lives, and everybody with a phone or a computer had generative AI at their fingertips, the world of creativity has drastically changed. Now, there are advocates on both sides of the spectrum. Some will tell you that the world of creativity as we know it will come to an end. There is no room for human creativity. Or there's the other end of the spectrum, which will say there will be immense opportunities for human creativity and enjoyment. So it doesn't matter which end of the spectrum that you go in. What is important is that you cannot afford to ignore this very important development. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? How can you unleash the power of technologies such as AI and cloud? What are strategies for firms to thrive in this era of creative tech? Now, before I do that, I actually wanted to introduce myself briefly. I didn't know that I was going to get such an elaborate introduction, but I'll just still take you through my version of my story. I was born here. This is where my journey started. This is what you see here is the Calicut Medical College. I lived on campus for several years. And even after my family moved out of Calicut, actually, I spent a lot of my time in the indoor stadium here. I used to play badminton, representing Kerala, and a lot of our state camps were held in this Calicut stadium. So Calicut is very special for me, and despite traveling all over the world, it actually gives me a very warm feeling to see all of this happening here and getting the opportunity to speak here. So thank you very much for that. And just to give you some context, that is my path, 9 countries, 3 continents. I won't go through it again. I think you heard it before. I started in Accenture, went into banking in Citigroup, and later on I joined McKinsey in management consulting, where I was a partner at the Amsterdam office. And later on I joined Microsoft, where I led teams across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Which brings me to the current phase of my life, which is I wear 2 hats in my professional life. The first one is that I'm an entrepreneur. So I am the co-founder and CEO of a platform called MyZenith, where we use generative AI for a personal growth. So we look at different stages an individual goes through in their development and see how we can use the latest technology to make personal impact more accessible and scalable. I also serve on the board of a few other startups in Europe and Middle East, some of them which deal with making large language models more collaborative. On the other hat I wear is that I am a writer. My first book was published in Europe in 2020, Silent Eloquence, and my last book second book was published in 2023 in Dubai. That Sky Has Moved Away, and that's the one that became an Amazon bestseller. Now, I tell you this because it is from this diversity of experiences combining technology, business, and creativity that I will talk to you for the next 20 minutes. And I hope that this gives you a context for the strategies that I will give to you. And we'll talk about 4 concrete strategies. I mean, there can be many more, but I hope that with these 4 concrete strategies, you will be in a good position to not just survive in this new age of AI in creativity, but really thrive in this new era. Let's start with some basics first. Now, I know you've heard all these terms, AI, creative tech, and all that. But I know we all come from different perspectives. So I want to create a common understanding of what some of these terms mean and what are some of the trends, challenges, and opportunities. There are many definitions to creativity, but one of my favorite definitions is that creativity is our ability to imagine something that did not exist and then bring it into material reality. So this bridge between what could be to what is, that is the essence of human creativity. Now, technology at the heart of it is tools, artifacts, instruments. So anything that helps us to make something, achieve something that extends or augments our capabilities, that can be thought of as technology. Now, creativity and technology are inextricably linked. You cannot have one without the other. So if you take the ancient cave paintings from the Stone Age, that is the first example of human creativity. At that time, humans needed stone tools to carve on the walls of the caves. But it is also this human spark of imagination that led them to make these tools in the first place and to imagine what are the different ways to use these tools and dream up different use cases, including for creative expression. So creativity and technology have always been together. But something is different now. In this age, when you have generative AI in creativity, there are two reasons specifically where you should sit up and take note of this new development. The first one, I will call it the risk of displacement. And we heard it earlier in the previous sessions as well. And this is the most common question that I get. Will AI replace humans in creativity? Now, to answer that question, I will show you a piece of text. This is a small bit from my own novel, The Sky Has Moved Away. So in this novel, it's a climate fiction. It talks about a climate crisis in Nigeria. And the main character, Ansara, she goes to her hometown in the middle of a heat wave. So let me read it out for you. The Port Harcourt bus station was a sweltering scene of commotion and discomfort as a heat wave gripped the city. Streams of sweaty passengers exited the buses looking wilted. Vendors called out weekly to sell bottles of water and juices to overheated travelers as the crippling heat climbed higher. Now, maybe I shouldn't have done it, but in preparation for this, I actually gave AI this prompt. I said, imagine that you're a reporter who's visiting Port Harcourt in a heat wave. Give me a few hundred words describing the scene. And this is what I got. Now, I'm not going to read it out to you, but trust me when I say that this is very, very good. So I would like to think that it does not sound like me. The tone of voice is different. But if I'm honest, this could really pass off as if it was written by a human. So what does this mean? Should I be afraid as a writer? Am I going to be displaced? My answer to this is no, and I will show the reasons why in a few slides. But regardless of that answer, this fear is very real. If you work in the creative field, or if you are leading a team of creatives, this fear of and a risk of displacement is something that you need to acknowledge and address actively with real concrete actions. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is pace of diffusion. Now, I know you heard the previous speaker say it will go a little slower, and everybody can have their own opinions on it. But what I want to talk about is pace of diffusion is the speed at which a new technology is accepted into the mainstream. So in November 2022, when OpenAI introduced ChatGPT, it broke all previous records on the pace of diffusion. It reached 1 million users in just under 5 days. And by the end of 2 months, there was 100 million active users. There is no precedent for this. We have not seen a pace of diffusion as fast as this. Now, in this presentation, you saw examples from the text and you saw examples from image. I want to give you an example from the world of video. And video, as you can imagine, is very important in the fields of marketing, filmmaking, and so on. So this is the timeline of generative AI video products which were introduced in just 2023. So in January of 2023, 14 months ago, there was no tool, there was no technology product which could take text and create a video. It just did not exist. But just in the year after that, so 2023, just look at the number of products that have come. The slide is full. And it does not even include the last most important announcement in this space, where OpenAI announced Sora in February, which is their own generative AI video tool. So the point I'm trying to say is this is coming at us much faster than we have ever seen before. So what are the considerations? So does this mean that AI is going to get everything right and they're going to take over? No. There are many significant limitations and considerations that we must be aware of. The first one is what I would call the AI traps. And it starts with our tendency to assign sentience to AI. So if you have chatted with ChatGPT, you would know that sometimes it can sound very much like a human. right? So it is very tempting to think that it will have human-like traits, that it will behave like you and me. But generative AI is not a human. At the heart of it is just a prediction tool. Nothing more, nothing less. It was trained by feeding it billions and billions of data points and saying what is most likely to come next. That's the fundamental nature of generative AI. And that leads to many fundamental issues as well, one of which is hallucinations, which is essentially when you ask AI a question and it will give you an answer which has nothing to do with truth. It just makes up the answer. Or it could be things like inconsistencies. You ask AI the same question 3 times over and it will give you 3 different answers. Or input bias, because ultimately the AI is built on the data that was fed into it. And that is a limited set of data, not the entire human knowledge, and also the data is biased. So it's important for us to understand these AI traps and not fall into them. The second consideration is complexity and overload. So if you work in this world of AI, it is easy to be overwhelmed by this whirlwind of announcements, new technologies, new tools every day. But the reality is, the biggest challenge in the speed of AI diffusion will be our human ability to adapt, to really cope with this cognitive complexity and overload. And even now, there are many decisions, whether they are ethical choices, practical choices, or legal choices that we need to make as humans, and that should not be delegated to AI. And if we are not careful, it's easy for them to get buried under this complexity and cognitive overload. The third consideration is what I would call human stupidity. So if you watch science fiction movies, Hollywood would like us to believe that the biggest threat from machine intelligence is that AI would take over humanity, they would outsmart us, and then they would kill us all. But there is a much more urgent and realistic threat, and that is that AI will actually obey us without question. It will do exactly as we tell it to do. So what are we going to tell it to do? We need to remember that at the heart of it, AI is just a tool, like a knife or a hammer, and we can do with it what we want to do with it. Now, humans use fire to cook our food, but we also use fire to burn down entire villages. So it is very important that we understand not only artificial intelligence, but we need to understand our human flaws and our biases and really take into consideration ethical and responsible AI. So what lies ahead for us? No one knows for sure, but here are 3 potential scenarios. Scenario 1 is AI as a collaborative tool. So we will work with AI hand in hand. AI will help us in tasks that we don't know how to do, and it will be a collaborator with us, augmenting our capabilities, increasing our productivity. Scenario 2 is democratization of creativity. So there are so many people with many creative ideas, but not all of us will have the skills to actually make that into a final product. So what AI can do is actually give the skills that is needed for all of us to have a creative expression. And creativity can actually become much more mainstream than it is now. Now, the third scenario, hopefully doesn't happen, but this can happen in a world where AI mimics the human artists and their styles, and in a world without real good regulatory frameworks. And we could end up in a world of discontent and displacement, where there are questions about authorship. There is an oversaturation of AI-generated content, and eventually maybe even displacement of human artists. So which of this is more likely to happen? There is not much to be gained in trying to predict the future. The better question to ask is, what can we do to shape this? So as a technologist, I ask myself, how can we move away from scenario 3 towards scenario 1 and 2? And whether AI will replace us or whether it will augment us will depend on the choices and approaches that we make and the strategies that we choose to follow at this point in time. So now let's talk about some of the strategies to thrive in the era of creative tech. And let me clarify something first. When we say creative tech, we mean this emerging field where traditional creative professions like visual design, graphics, arts, writing, gaming, and photography, filmmaking, all of that comes together with some of the emerging technologies like cloud, AI, blockchain, metaverse, and so on. It's a new and emerging field. But most of my presentation has been on AI and specifically generative AI. And that's not because the other technologies are not important. It's because AI will have a disproportionate influence, and it will accelerate and influence all the others too. And the 4 strategies I will show you here today, they are relevant not just for AI, but in any context of an accelerating technology. So let's get started. The first strategy is prepare for increased demand. So the first strategy, I want to take you to 1865. This is William Stanley Jevons. He was a British economist. In his age, there was the steam engine. So the steam engine had been invented, and it was increasing the efficiency of coal. Now, with classical economics, everybody expected that when the efficiency of coal increases, the demand will fall. But that's not what happened. Instead, the demand for coal kept increasing and increasing. So the British government asked Jevons to study this phenomenon, and he came up with this very complicated sentence, which we call, and a report actually that goes with it, which is now known as the Jevons paradox. Essentially what it says is, when there is a new technological innovation, the efficiency or productivity will increase. By classical economics, that means the price will fall. So when the price falls, you expect demand to decrease, but that's not what happens. When the price falls, more people can afford to use it. And not just that, the people who are already using it will start using it even more. So what happens is that when this technological innovation happens, you see a significant increase in demand. So that's the Jevons paradox. And since then, we have seen this play out over and over again in many different industries. So when cars became more fuel efficient, it's not that the consumption of petrol decreased. Actually, the consumption of fuel increased much more. When LED lights were invented, we expected the consumption to decrease, but that's not what happened. People just started putting much more lights. And in the semiconductor industry, when the chips became much more efficient, we saw an explosion in demand, not a conservation in the silicon. So what does this mean for AI and creative tech? If you work in the creative field now, this is not the time for fear. This is not the time to reduce your investments, and this is not the time to hire less. This is the time to lean in, to keep your eyes open for increased opportunities, and to strategize for a world of increased demand. Now, what does that look like? That will depend on your exact business. So it could be things like scalable architectures. It could be things like having a more adaptable and hybrid workforce. It could be things like prioritizing agility. So whatever it might be that what it looks for you, the important thing is make your strategies with the expectation of an increased demand. Now, the second one is not a surprise. Invest in skills. Now, does this mean that, efficiency increases, demand will increase, and work is just going to come your way? No, not at all. There will be a change in the nature of work. Now, I like this picture. This was taken in the 1920s, late 1920s, and this is a picture of the last day that the horses worked in the New York City department. So in the 1920s, New York City used to, they had on their payroll about 6,000 horses for the fire department. But over the next decade or so, they were all replaced by the motorized vehicle. Now there is this anecdote about a man who went off and bought 1,000 horses just before this happened. He was so happy that he got a very nice deal. Now, I don't know if that part of the story is true, but what I do know that the message is very relevant for us. Don't go buying horses when the world is making cars. Now, in every technological disruption, the efficiency will increase and demand will increase. But there is a transitional period, a period of shift. Now, what has happened in all the previous disruptions is that this happens over a longer period of time. So as one technology or one skill decreases, a new generation will come with new skills, and the older generation would gracefully, or sometimes not, fade into retirement. But what is happening in our generation is that the pace of change is so high that we are going to see multiple changes within our lifetimes. And even if you don't change your job or your career, the nature of your job and your role is going to change. So it is very important. If there's one thing you can do, it is invest in skills. Whether as an individual or if you have a team of creatives, continuous upskilling, keeping abreast of what is happening is very, very important. Now, the third strategy is elevate your offering. Now, the harsh reality of AI in creative tech is there is no room for mediocrity. So think about graphic design. So just a few years ago, if someone wanted a logo for their company, they would hire a designer. They wanted somebody who would understand their brand's visual identity, knows how to use the right tools, and then come up with a logo. So you didn't have to be exceptional in your work. As long as someone needed a logo, you had enough work. But now, if someone wants to have a logo done, the first thing they will do is go to AI. So does this mean there is no job for a human designer? No, not really. But they will have an expectation of a designer who will combine the ease of use and convenience of AI with the flair and depth of a human designer. In other words, anybody who is willing to pay for a human designer is going to expect a higher quality of work. The good enough work is no longer going to be enough. So what does this mean? Go big or go home. So take this as an opportunity to really elevate your offering. So use the opportunity where you can have the tools to do the mundane technical work, increase your efficiency, and free yourself up to embrace the extraordinary, and therefore offer a better, more creative product and service to your customers. Now, the last one I have is collaborate with AI. So you saw in the three scenarios that one of the best possible pathways is actually a world of human-AI collaboration, where we work hand in hand with the AI. Now, you might already say, I already collaborate with AI. I use ChatGPT to write my emails. I use Midjourney to create some images. Or even if you just use auto suggestions on your Gmail, you are working with AI. But that's not what I'm talking about. If you are a professional in the creative tech space, you need to go beyond what a layman uses with these AI tools, and even a power user of these consumer products. You need to have a much more structured and deliberate way of collaborating with AI. For this, let's look at this concept called 10 Faces of Innovation. This was introduced by IDEO. IDEO is one of the world's biggest and most successful design firms. And what they do is they disaggregate their creative process into 10 roles. So things like anthropologist is someone who goes to the customer and really understands what they need. A storyteller is someone who stitches everything into one coherent narrative. Or experimenter is someone who tries out different things. Now, your creative process may be simpler, or you might assign multiple roles to the same person. But what is important is to really think about your end-to-end process, disaggregate it into different steps, and assign it. And at this stage is where you can use AI to the full effect. You can look at where there are gaps in your team, and you can use AI to fill those gaps. Whatever it is you choose to do, thinking about your process in its entirety, having a strategy of collaboration with AI, and building it is going to be a strategic imperative in this new age of AI. So let's put it all together. There are 4 strategies to thrive in the era of creative tech. Prepare for increased demand, invest in skills, elevate your offering, and collaborate with AI. And a final recap, AI is going to change the world, and especially the creative world, and it is going to change it significantly. But the good news is, with the right approaches and the right strategies, the future ahead of us will be much better. So thank you, everyone. And if you would like to continue the conversation, you can find me here. Thank you.